welcome to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri Hudson Passey from Carolina Girl Genealogy, and we've got a full panel and a very special guest tonight. So I'm going to get this show on the road by introducing our panel. First, we've got Melissa Barker, our archive lady. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, Cheri. Hi, everybody. Looking good.
Good. I'm glad you're here. Now, I've been told that my microphone is a little low, so I'm trying to shout so everybody can hear me. So that's my problem tonight. We have Bernice Bennett from Genealogists, right? Is your website?
That's right.
Yeah. We're so
Hello,
glad.
everyone.
It's been a while since Bernice has been able to join us, so we're so happy that she's here. Hey, Bernice. Good
Hi there.
And we have Christine Woodcock, Genealogy Tours of Scotland here. Hi, Christine.
Hey, soft talker.
I know. I'm not really. Anybody who knows me knows I am not a soft talker. So I apologize for that. I think all my technology is falling apart today. So camera won't work right. Headset won't work right.
It's all good. It's all good.
We're going to soldier through. And we've got Dan Earl, the Family History Guy.
Hello.
Hey, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. Good. We've got Mary Kircher Roddy, MKR Genealogy. Hello, Mary.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
It's good to see you too. Laura Hedgecock is here, Treasure Chest of Memories, and we love her backdrop.
Good evening, everybody.
From the Family History Library, we have Laura Hedgecock.
Or so it would appear.
So it would appear. And last but not least for the panel, we have Shelley Murphy, Family Tree Girl.
Hello there. Good evening. Glad to be here tonight.
Oh, I remembered all your names and all your websites. I
You
don't know how I
did
did
good.
it. All right.
Hey,
All
I'm
right.
impressed.
I'm impressed too. But our special guest tonight, we are so happy, and that's why our panel's full. We have David Rencher, who is the director of the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, Mecca. Mecca for us genealogists, and that's why Laura's got her backdrop. So, David, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's delightful to be here. This should be fun.
You don't even know.
We shall see.
We shall see. All right, because my mic is not working all that great, I am going to turn it over to my wonderful panelists. Hit them with your best questions. Go ahead. Go ahead. Who wants to go first? Oh, don't everybody say
David, before we start bombarding you with questions, I know the one question you always have to answer over and over again, so just maybe let's get this one out of the way is, could you explain to viewers that aren't familiar with it why some things are only viewable at the Family History Library and how you guys go about trying to get us all access and what the realities are?
Thank you. It's a great question. It's a great place to start. I like starting there. I do have a joking answer, and that is we did a survey of all of your ancestry, and everybody who we know needs that specific image. We locked those. And so that's my short version.
I believe it.
The real version is we, over the years, we started creating images of records in 1938. And when we did that, we had to have a contract with each and every archive. So if it was a courthouse, if it was a library, if it was a national archive, whatever it was, we had to have a contract with them for the rights to have those images and then to be able to share those images with our guests. And so we watched this whole thing play out with microfilm images for many years. And then when we shifted to digital images and the online environment, we literally had to go back and renegotiate every single contract that we had ever done since 1938. And when we did that, we went back and in some instances, because we were able to circulate rolls of film out to family history centers and back, some of the archive holders, the custodians, simply gave us that permission again. And so they said it's the same as if it's a roll of microfilm. You can only send that to one of your facilities, and that's the only place you can do it. We, of course, our starting position was we just want free and open access on the internet because the world's changed, right? And now we have a website. And so that's always our starting position. To their credit, many of the archivists and custodians gave us full permission to just put the images up online. And so we're all the benefactors of that. but in some instances, some of the archivists weren't yet ready to make the decision because many of them are governed by the fact that their records are public records, and therefore no one can make any money off of those images, not even them. And so there are some instances, however, where I think some are either hopeful that that could change, that there could be an access fee, the same as when you go in and pay $20 for a copy of a government document for the processing fee. I think they were, in some instances, hopeful because they're looking at funding shortages for their facility, and so they wanted to withhold the rights of putting those images up at this time on the off chance that at some point they'll be able to generate a revenue stream from that. Others simply said, no, that's the access we granted and we're happy with it and it's working great for us and that's what we're going to give you. We do have a few instances where we went in and they literally said, no, we're not going to give you any access online. And so we had to push back a little and we had to kind of say, well, what was in it for us then? Why did we come in and create images of all your materials if none of us can have access? And so generally after a long, uncomfortable pause, they agreed to let us have access for members of our church, since the website is completely funded by tithing donations from members of the church. And so there are a few instances where only members, if they're logged in with a member ID, can get access to images. That's a very small amount, but we basically have those three fallback positions of starting with, first and foremost, just open access. Next would be centers and affiliate libraries, and next would be members only. We haven't had anybody in reality that I'm aware of in the end who said absolutely no access, because shaming still works in the 21st century.
Well, and I know I've talked to people about this before too, and it told them, you know, if FamilySearch had its preference, everything would be open to everybody. They're not trying to say, oh, only members of the church can see these records. That's not what y'all want. You want it open for everybody.
Right.
I think once you explain that it's not you doing it, it's the people that own the records doing it, a light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, okay, I get it now.
You know, I can talk a little bit to what David said about facilities and revenue and income for them. You know, as an archivist working, I have a budget, and, you know, I'm very fortunate that my budget has stayed the same for literally the past 10 years. I've been very fortunate. But I know other facilities, even here in Tennessee where I'm at, that get their budgets cut. And the way they make their revenue is by copying records. And so that's, I completely understand that aspect of it.
So I have a question, anecdotal probably. Ohio is fabulous. I mean, and it seems like everybody's got some connection to Ohio. I go to some other states like Nebraska maybe, or California, where I'm trying to do some research, and it's not as good. And I kind of like, why can't I get the good stuff I want? There's probably some history behind that. Is that FamilySearch focus more on Ohio, or why is it so much better than so many other states?
Well, we've been in Ohio imaging records for a long time. Obviously, so many people pass through Ohio. The interesting thing in this country is that all of the records are managed state by state. And so there's no federal mandate to say, okay, all of these records have to be open. I happen to be adopted. And so it's one of the pieces of access that I watch all the time. And so literally, if you're the adoptee, it's a roll of the dice, right? If you were lucky enough to be adopted in, then, you know, you can see your adoption record. If you were unlucky enough to be adopted in Arizona, like I was, then it's a closed record. And yet here we are in the United States, right? And you would think that that would be one federal mandate, either adoption records are open or closed. But they leave it to each of the states to make the decisions. And so as we go from state to state, we're governed by all of these different laws in each and every state. You know, the Record Preservation and Access Committee watches the legislation in all of these states every year, because they're continuing to either open or close records. We want to support good legislation that is genealogically sound and privacy sound and supports good records management. If there's something that is closing records or appears to be closing records out of fear, then we generally speak up and then we say, you know, here are kind of the facts. Why are we closing these records when it's working in, you know, and we can give them an illustration of 15 other states where it's working.
So I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mary or Laura.
No, I didn't have one yet.
Oh, okay. So one thing about the little camera that's being referenced about being locked up, not camera, but the little lock, but
The key over the
the
camera
key.
icon.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I can blame the local government and facilities on that and not FamilySearch. Is that correct, for my brick walls? Because I know my information is under that key.
So most of the time, yes.
Okay.
There are some instances we have record plays in motion with partners where we may have temporarily embargoed access until we have finished that agreement with one of our partners. And so by and large, however, it's all record custodian managed, and that's the way we look at it. When we work with our partners, in some instances, it's apparent that they are going to be able to index a set of records far sooner than we are going to be able to do it. But for them to make that economically viable to them, they are going to have to get some kind of revenue return on that investment for a certain period of time in which we would have to embargo that record, and then we would have free and open access to it. So you will actually see instances where there may be a key on those records today, but the key may come off in the future. And so all of it is just part of this huge issue of managing billions and billions of images.
So just one last thing. Can you explain to me about the ROC? Is it ROA, ROC?
Record
Tell me
operation.
about the ROC.
Yeah, so record operation centers, these are areas where they are doing a lot of indexing and record management, and where we are able to distribute this. We work primarily with a volunteer workforce. And so these ROCs, these record operations centers, manage specific projects for us, and we are able to send out those record batches and things to them, and then they are able to produce those records. So, you know, the fact that we're able to publish 1 million to 1.5 million records every day is a direct result of those ROCs all doing their job and all of the volunteers online indexing records. And it's just, like I say, everything is like volunteer driven. We do very little offshore keying. There are some instances where we will do offshore keying on some record sets where we do not have a good set of volunteers with language capabilities or skill levels for the handwriting, but those are far and few between.
Thank
Well,
you.
David, this is Bernice. How you doing?
Good, how are you, Bernice?
Oh, great, great. Well, David, I can tell you, it has taken me a good 10 years to find marriage license of my great-grandmother from Mississippi. And so I was just so happy to see the Mississippi marriage records come online.
Yes.
So do you all have a certain group of records, let's say for certain states, that you will roll out, or categories, for example, marriage records, next it may be school records, or you just batch them and put them out there?
No, we have a very, as you would imagine, well-defined strategy. We put record classifications into tiers, and that top tier of records are vital records. And then anything that will lineage link or show relationships, and then we just move down from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 as we do those records. So when we were staring at these, 2.4 billion rolls of film, we had to decide, so which of those films are we going to image first and which ones are going to be last? And so it was that record strategy of how valuable are those records. As far as states go, there isn't, obviously, again, you've got 50 states. One of them has to be first and one of them has to be last, although
Sure.
we will have multiple states going at the same time. One of the things that we look at, of course, is the data of where are people struggling the most, where are they having the most difficulty. Every library we've ever, every survey we've ever done in the library, the 3 states that always come out on top are Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. And they just come, they may change position once in a while, but it's those 3 states over and over and over again. I'm like you, I've been doing a lot of research in Alabama, Mississippi, and so I'm like just dying for this Mississippi stuff, right? I've made numerous trips there to the archives and love doing research in the state, but at some point we had to wait long enough until those records just surfaced up in the pile and we got there. In other instances, we're still having to renegotiate contracts in some of the states, and that just, again, it's the troops on the ground and making the phone calls and sending out the paperwork and those reviews going through the state's legal team and our legal team. And I'll tell you, I'd a lot rather work in the library than work on the legal team for records. That's not my deal.
Does the same go for the books? How the books get digitized?
So book collection, no. Book collection actually is managed a bit differently. Obviously, again, kind of like with the volunteers, one of our major avenues for books are book donations. And so we still readily accept book donations. We have almost 500,000 books in the library. We have a number of them that we are now getting back and rebinding and doing a number of different things. We're coming up with processes so that if the book isn't in the library, you can request it and it goes to the top of the pile to be researched, and we get the book back. But a lot of the information on the books is simply availability. So our staff is constantly looking at what's being published and what's needed and what's out there. Let's say that one of them is creating a wiki page for a specific item in the research wiki, and they come across books and they want to list them in the wiki, but they find that they're not in the collection. Well, suddenly now they're online and they're purchasing those books to help support the wiki page. So part of it is just having knowledge about which books are available and what to get. I have assigned them to do some very specific things where I found weak spots in the collection. I actually started my career in the reference area. And at that time, the Irish collection was just very poor. We didn't have most of the major periodicals. There were a lot of books that we did not have. And so for 5 years, I spent a lot of time trying to beef up the Irish collection. Most recently, I've been taking several of the African American institutes. I'm finding that we were very weak on a number of the books that we had for African American. And so I've got Tom Reed and some others working specifically to increase the number of books that we have for African American. I've been working with Rob Hamilton in Australia on fraternal organizations. He came and spoke at Roots Tech. I don't know if any of you managed to get to his session, but it was fabulous. And so another area that I found that we are extremely weak are with fraternal organization histories and biographical sketches and that kind of thing. So at times we just simply focus on some areas where we notice a deficiency in the collection and specifically go after that.
Okay. I know that there's been a time or two, and you go to a shelf to get a book and it's not there because it's out being digitized, which is a good thing, but it's frustrating when you're there because you want the book. So.
Yeah, we actually have a bit of a situation for a time here. When we put the discovery experience on the main floor, that was where all the published family histories and everything were. Mm-hmm. And so we went through this heavy digitization process of a very, very rapid digitization, and remove those books off the main floor and put them in storage. At the time, we were told that it would be okay to show those online digitally as long as we had the copy in storage and nobody could access more than one copy of the book. The lawyers came back, being risk adverse. They decided, no, we're not going to take the risk of that. We'd prefer that somebody sued iArchives for that legislation get that piece in play than us. And so for now, you will find instances where we cannot give you a copy of the book. We can't give you the physical copy of the book. We can't give you a digital copy of the book, but the book is in our catalog. Right. And so that's the problem I'm trying to solve. It's like job one. But you'll see some significant changes coming here in the library in the next little bit. One of the advantages of being closed is we can do some things in the library. So you'll be seeing some changes. Well, obviously one of the things to get these books back, I've got to have shelf space to put them on. So we'll be acquiring shelving. Phase one were the workstations, like the one that's behind Laura there. So we started with the computer terminals and doing that. The next significant round there are all of the flat table spaces. Some of those flat tables have been there since the building opened in 1985, and I think some of the chairs are from like 1894 when we started. I don't know. They're pretty uncomfortable. So you're going to continue to see us upgrade the furnishings, and we're going to do that. We've got several plans for upgrading some of the other aspects of the library. So one of the things is that the discovery experience now on the main floor with its colors and decor and all that kind of thing is out of sync with the other 4 floors in the library. And so you'll see a lot done to harmonize that and to just refresh the library.
Well, we can see that behind Laura.
Yes.
See that with the computers, and you have done such a wonderful job with that. It just, you walk in and it just draws you in to want to research. You know, before all those microfilms, it was in the dark, and you know, you're huddled behind that little machine.
Yeah.
And now you walk in and everything is open, and it's just beautiful, and it just makes you want to sit there for hours and just and research.
And not only that, I know I told you this, David, at Roots Tech, but as a migraine sufferer, I couldn't use the microfilm. I would they triggered migraines. And so for me, it is such a pleasure just to use the equipment. And then they have the doggles where you can put your USB drive and you can immediately capture those pictures instead of, you know, when I have tried it before, I was sitting there all dizzy and sick with my cell phone trying to take a picture of the microfilm. So it's just such a massive improvement.
So I do have another question.
Go right ahead.
On the local level, how much do you foresee or could foresee that FamilySearch and more of the local or Salt Lake City, whichever, work with the local historical societies? A lot of them are pretty much regional types. And there's documents that are not in the courthouses or the typical places that you know, FamilySearch would go, because these could have been documents that families submitted. I know in one of the historical societies that I'm affiliated with, I know the oldest document we have is a land patent, 1750. We have some Jefferson stuff, and you know, James Madison. It's just the area where I'm at. So it's very rich, but it's very rich at the local level, and like the Library of Virginia. So I'm asking to see if that's something on the radar. And I know there is some probably partnerships, just because I've dealt with FamilySearch for so long, but I'm looking for that, especially where I'm at in Virginia. If there's an opportunity, our historical society will be 80 years old.
Wow.
You gotta realize what's in there. And the building will be 100 next year. So
yeah. So here's kind of the situation. I appreciate the question. I know it looks like we have a lot of data, but there's a lot more data out there to get. We still have courthouses in the U.S. that we have not filmed in. There are over 3,200 courthouses. Yeah, there are over 3,200 courthouses, and we have courthouses that we have not filmed, and so we've been systematically working our way through those through the states. And in some instances, we've been back to the same courthouse 2 or 3 times to acquire more records. So like manuscript libraries in universities where you've got all of those deposited family papers, many of those have slave information, particularly in the South. You know, they're rich in historical records and documents. The historical societies, like you're mentioning, it's just simply a factor of we just have not been able to get to all of those, and we're also trying to acquire records globally. So if we were only trying to acquire them in the United States, I'd say we'd get there more quickly. But the truth is, we are, you know, right now we've got over 4,000 contractors on the ground in Africa collecting oral genealogies because we're trying to get to those elders in those tribes before they pass away and we lose the information completely. So it's really just a matter of resources.
Yeah, same thing, because even the libraries are also in the same situation, and I'm speaking for the Library of Virginia right now. I know one specific county, there's 200 and some boxes they have not gotten to yet. And for years we're waiting because, of course, I want to blame my brick walls on somebody, you know, and I'm trying not to say FamilySearch because it's not their issue, since he so eloquently explained, you know, why we can't unlock that little key there. But you know, I think we're all pretty much in the same, but, you know, I don't know how much more either at the local level we could reach out. I mean, if there was something from the Historical Society to say, hey, can I scan this and send this to you so to be up?
So there are a couple different options, actually.
Okay.
One of the things is just people like you who know the people on the ground in those areas. So it's a whole lot different if one of our guys just makes a cold call, right? Just calls up on the phone and says, hey, I'm Steve Waters and I want to come, you know, digitize your records. It's a lot different, Shelley, if you walk into the courthouse with Steve and you know, introduce him to your contact and say, look, these guys can do this for your records. There's no cost to you, that kind of thing, right? So Steve actually had one of those instances. Had a lady that was 82. She was a president of a genealogical society. And she walked into the courthouse with Steve and she said, hello, George, you know, the county clerk. And he said hello to her. And she says, now, George, you need to get your records digitized and this man can do it for you. And he said, yes, ma'am. And turns out that she had taught George in 4th grade and he had immediately reverted to that teacher's and was doing exactly as he was told.
I've got students, but they're not from the 4th.
But it's that relationship that you often have with the local, you know, if somebody comes into Melissa's archive whom she trusts and already knows, it's a whole different introduction than if I walk in cold, Melissa doesn't know me from Adam, and suddenly I'm saying, you know, I mean, they have to look at you skeptically, right? First and foremost, nobody does anything for free, right? There's always this catch. The thing they're always trying to figure out is, okay, what's the catch? And so it takes us getting past the fact that there isn't a catch. We're literally going to digitize your records for free and make them available.
Right.
And I can tell you that archivists are very protective of their records.
As they should be, Melissa. In many instances, honestly, we're looking to them to protect those records for us. And so I'm glad they're protective.
And I've got a couple of things too. I want to say that first and foremost, I want to thank FamilySearch because as an archivist, and I've been a genealogist for 30 years, so genealogy is my thing, but I've been an archivist for about 10 years now. I thank you because one of the things that a lot of our archivists do is to protect our records is we will go to FamilySearch and we will show our researchers who are coming into our facilities the records on FamilySearch. So we don't have to pull any delicate records that we have. Now, if a patron says, I want to see the actual record, we will do that, because as a genealogist, I get that. I want to see the actual record too. But that is a wonderful service for us to be able to preserve our records that are sitting on shelves by showing them what's on FamilySearch. And a couple of questions. First, what would you say to an archivist whose name we won't mention, that thinks that their records are not ready to be digitized because they've not been fully processed?
So metadata is a big issue, and I can fully appreciate that they want them to be organized. So, you know, we've got this whole group of us here online tonight, and imagine somebody saying to each of us, we're going to come in tomorrow and digitize your collection of genealogical materials in your house, right? And how many of us would gasp and say, well, no, wait a minute, I want to organize them first. I don't,
Yes.
you know, I can't.
Shelley's, I don't even care, just come.
Yeah, well.
We are busting at the seams at the Historical Society.
Right.
And I would like to safely put, just like Melissa's saying, preserve those, but people need access.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And yeah.
But that's the trade-off, right? And
Yeah.
so if I can't create enough metadata that I can then get into the record, or if I put up, you know, 50 bazillion browsable images, you know, now I'm sitting here page down, page down, page down, looking for this golden nugget in all of these records. And so I get the argument, totally get the argument. I think the thing that is overriding to me is that we still lose courthouses every year. Webster County, Mississippi, Bernice, you saw that one go up in flames in 2013. I think it was 2016. We saw the Hancock, Georgia courthouse go up in, you know, all these records lost. Now in the instance of Webster County, we'd been in there and we had microfilmed years ago, but they had given us a cutoff date, I think, of 1913. So all of the marriages, everything from 1913 to the present, to the time of the fire, were all lost. And I think that's the overriding concern in my mind, Melissa, is what if? Because you know what the source of that fire was traced back to? A power strip in the administrative office.
Yes.
A power strip, okay? You're all sitting here now suddenly thinking about the power strap that's probably at your feet. Yeah. And I mean, literally, you know, but that's what it was. And so it could be a space heater gets left on. It could be any number of things, right?
Yeah, my archives is in the basement of our courthouse.
Yeah.
And we have offices on 2 more floors above me. And I worry every day because I've seen people leave their coffee pot on over the weekend. I've seen them, what you're talking about. And
well,
so, yeah.
And being in the basement, if there is a fire, where's all the water going?
Yes.
I mean, it's just that simple, right? When you explain the logistics of it, it's like, okay, maybe the fire doesn't get to the basement, but all the water does. We're just as bad off as if we'd had the fire, right?
Absolutely. And I'll say something about Tennessee records. FamilySearch has done a fantastic job. Tennessee records are very, very well represented. And in fact, I know archivists here in Tennessee that FamilySearch has been to their archives to digitize. And so maybe one day I'll have them come to my archives, and that'll be great. But the last thing I wanted to say was I have a little bit of a bone to pick.
All
right. When you go to Houston County, Tennessee on the catalog, there, if you go to the newspapers, there are some of our earliest newspapers there. But interestingly enough, there's like 6 different links there. And if you go to all of them, it's all like the same microfilm reel. And so it makes you think there's more there than what's there. But when I looked at it, it's like, this is all the same microfilm reel, but there's 6 different links that you can
probably
choose.
Happened was they probably got multiple DGS numbers. I'll have to have them look at it.
Okay. I would appreciate that because
the batch, and so it does exactly what you're saying. It makes it look like there are more entries than there really are, but
yeah,
I'll have them look at it.
Thank you.
I have a question,
Okay,
David.
I have a question.
I've been trying, Bernice. So in Washington, the non-indexed records, the browse-only records that you can look at, there's a category called miscellaneous, and I heard somebody tell me that miscellaneous is not an appropriate filing category.
File
And
by
there's
pile.
6.8 million records in this. And when you look at it, it's got marriage records, it's got naturalization records. How
So
do you get
refer
those
back-
in the appropriate category?
Refer back to Shelley's question earlier, where she said, I want you to just come digitize, and we don't have the metadata to give you. All right?
Can you train us how to do that? So if people reach out to you guys, can you train us and then let us just ship it to you?
So the short answer is yes. There's a way that we can do that. And then that's also part of the purpose of the rocks.
Right.
And so, Mary, the rocks take on this assignment. So they'll get data like that, and then the people in the rock are assigned to go through and categorize it and catalog it. Every record in the entire system is really dependent upon the person that created the metadata. And so it's a difference in skill level. And so in some instances, we have somebody who is cataloging the record who is also a genealogist. They catalog records much differently than somebody who's just a professional trained cataloger, because they understand the way the record may be used, because genealogists use a lot of records for a hammer, even though it's not cataloged as a hammer.
Well,
And
there's,
so,
I mean, titles, it says, marriage records, and gives dates, or in petitions for naturalization.
Right, but we don't know what got into the fielded data in the metadata, right? Okay. And so just because it's on the target board from the camera operator doesn't mean that it got converted into the database to attach the metadata to that specific record.
Well, the click on the title says marriage records.
Yeah, yes, but you can also lump a number of marriage records under there, right? And so it doesn't differentiate. Okay. So think in the South, where we have segregated marriage records. Sometimes those all get mixed together under just the category marriage records, and you don't know which volume you're in unless it's specifically calling it out. It really is just it's an issue of who has the time to create the metadata for that record and how deep can they go on the metadata. So I'd have to look at a specific for sure, but that's my suspicion at this point, is we just didn't get it. For years, I sat on an advisory committee for the National Archives for the new electronic records archives that the National Archives was creating. And they said one of their problems is the metadata that's transferred to them from all of the various government agencies. So now I want you to think, how many of you use Excel? A bunch of you use Excel spreadsheets? Okay. Word. The most common metadata in Excel spreadsheets is sheet number 1, sheet number 2, sheet number 3, right? Because nobody goes down to the bottom of their sheet and renames it to what it is. And so now when these government agencies transfer Excel spreadsheets to the National Archives, the metadata that's in there is sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, okay? There's nothing they can do with that. They can't tell you what that record is without somebody physically looking at it and renaming it, if they can even figure out what it is, because it came from a government agency to an archivist. If the archivist can figure out what it is, then they can rename it. The other possibility is that they rename it something and it's incorrect.
Well, David, I can give you some words of encouragement. Many of archivists are working from home these days. And there was a survey done among archivists through this, I think it was through the Society of American Archivists, asking, what is the number one thing you're working on at home? Metadata.
Oh, good.
That's nice.
Well, it's something they can do online.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fabulous. Bernice, did you have another question?
Well, yes, I do have another question, and it's the public health part of me that I want to know, because eventually the centers will be opening again. Are you all working on specific guidelines so that when people come in, they may see reconfiguration of some of the workstations? You may have social distancing guidelines for people when they come in, or hand sanitizers or wipes to wipe off the computers. Have you all thought about what you're going to do when you do reopen?
Yes, thanks for the question. You can see from the computer setup behind Laura that one of the great things is that those are almost like social distancing now. We have added hand sanitizer dispensers to all of the floors as you get off the elevator. All of those are there now and in place. We were already wiping down all of our equipment twice a day. And so all of those get disinfected, all of our readers, all of our flat spaces, and that's all done by our missionary staff. And then the cleaning crew comes in at night and does all of the regular cleaning. The building always gets a deep cleaning every month, and so they're just surfaces and stuff that we just continue to wipe down. This thing is going to be interesting simply because people don't know they've got it until they get the symptoms. And so the challenge, I think, in all of our public spaces is people are going to come into a public space feeling just fine, and the next day suddenly come down with the symptoms. And I don't know how you guard against that in a public setting. We have not even discussed at this point an opening date. I don't know when we will reopen at this point. I have 2 high-risk categories. All of my helpers are already in the high-risk category because that's their age demographic, and many of my guests are in the high-risk category as well. And so, in some ways, it's the perfect storm in that I have a building full of high-risk people. By definition, I'm in the category myself, age-wise. So. That's certainly something we're looking, but we have implemented all of those protocols to make sure that we can do it. We have disposition over whether or not I can revoke somebody's library privileges. So if I get somebody in there who is belligerent, won't adhere to the guidelines, won't work with us, I can have them escorted from the building. I simply call security, and we're a private institution, and I can make that call if I need to. So it's my last resort. I don't want to, but at the same time, if you're endangering other people there, then we're simply going to take action.
Chris, did you have a question?
No.
You moved your
I'm
hand?
fascinated by all of it.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by all of it. I'm listening.
Christine's in Canada.
Yeah,
I've got a question.
Actually,
Dan's
I discovered through a webinar that I took last week. I'm taking a lot of webinars right now. That the Ontario land records are at FamilySearch. Who knew?
Some of those collections are just going up, and publishing so many records a day, you just never know what's going to appear.
Yeah. So now I'll be the first person sitting in line when the center in Hamilton opens.
Fabulous.
The
Dan,
great
you had a
pause.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
The great pause.
Great pause.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for using that term.
This is a hashtag Dan's term.
That's right.
The
I want
great
it called
pause.
the Great Pause for a number of reasons. But so David, can you explain to us? I mean, it seems like you've mentioned that a lot of your patrons are older. A lot of them are established genealogists, but you also, I'm assuming, get a lot of foot traffic, people coming in that are brand new. Maybe they've never done genealogy before, and they just said, you know what, I'm just going to start at the Family History Library, right? So how do you, one, kind of curate their experience for these new people coming in, and how do you get the balance right between new people and those of us that come in? Like, I walk in, I just wave to the missionaries, walk right to the elevator, hit B1, and then just go to my happy place, right? I know where all the records are. I know exactly where I need to go. So how do you balance me with, say, a new person, or even a young person who's 15, 16 years old that comes in? How do you get that balance right so that you're offering sort of the Family History Library experience to both of those sets of people?
Great question, Dan. In the last year, we've put all of our staff and all of our volunteers and missionaries through customer service training. People like you who walk in, who look like they know where they're going and don't need help, they're trained to just let you go and do your thing and just proceed to your floor and begin your research. Body language, you get other people who walk in and it's like deer in the headlights. They're looking around. They don't know kind of where to go, what to do. And so our staff or missionaries will approach them and ask if they can help. They do a little bit of interview, and then basically that triage there at the front door determine what they need to do and how they can best help and serve them. We don't make any bones about it. We are trying to entice or bring in the whole spectrum of the demographic. So we want youth. You know, if you just kind of look at all of us here online, at some point we need more youth involved in this, in this industry. I knew I was going to be in trouble.
We're not gonna survive this if we don't bring the younger ones in.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
It's exactly right. And so, you know, who are us of tomorrow, right?
Right, right,
Who are how do we get them to feel something that sparks their interest like it did each of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the secret sauce that we're really trying to come up with, is how do we entice these younger folks to get as enthused about family history as we are, and how do we help train them up and get them to have a great experience. And so when anybody walks through the door of the Family History Library, we try to make the experience all about them. And so, and that's the complete spectrum. So Dan, if you walk in and you're in the advanced category, how can we make the experience all about you so that you aren't bothered by people at the other end of the spectrum who might detract from your experience? How do we do that? How do we accommodate people who want the lights on because they get migraines versus people who want the lights off and they want to go stick their head in a microfilm reader and have the experience that they've had for the last 40, 50 years? We're trying to accommodate all of those kinds of experiences. People who want it all digital, people who say, I don't want to look at film or books, I want to look only online. Believe it or not, we've got people that walk in and literally, if it isn't online, they don't want to hear about it, right? So I'm sitting here with this microfilm that would answer their question, and I cannot get them to look at it because it's not online. But that's the guideline they give me, and so that's where we are.
This is what we
So
do.
it's a great question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is what we do to solve the problem. We added another floor, and we have private rooms. So we can rent out private rooms or sign up for private rooms. And then we, you know, one'll be microfilm, one'll be digital.
So let's answer the added floor question. That's what I often get. Many of you
you can't go sideways. You have to go up.
Many of you are aware that when the building was built in 1985, they expanded the columns in the building to accommodate 3 more floors to go up. Since 1985, shock of shocks, the building codes have changed. And so the building code no longer supports those floors to go up. So we cannot add floors to the top of the library.
No private rooms. Oh, man.
Right. So I
I already went to sleep falling over in that librry, so I've already had that experience.
So I can go out, but then I have to tear down the Plaza Hotel that you all stay in. So that doesn't seem to be an option.
We could all get rooms in the library.
Yes.
There you go, Christine.
I can see BJ's, you know, kind of
Absolutely.
JB's. Yeah.
JB's, is that what it is?
JB.
Okay, I have a quick Michigan question.
Yay.
The Michigan Archives, and Dan, tell me if I get this wrong, because I probably will. The Michigan Archives is kind of a satellite family history center where there's increased access.
They're an affiliate.
An affiliate, which is so cool. And I was just wondering, how widespread is this model where state libraries are now working with y'all as an affiliate research area where people can get some access?
I can say really quick that it's not even a state library, just our local library here in Myrtle Beach, it just became an affiliate about a year ago. So it doesn't have to be a state library.
So really great question. So affiliate library status is one of those things. When we stopped circulating films, the affiliate libraries had microfilm circulation privileges. And so we now have about 1,000 affiliate libraries. We're looking to increase that number. But basically what that does is it unlocks those locked images, Shelley, in the affiliate libraries.
Virginia?
And so Library of Virginia is one that Barbara Little and I have been working on now for over a year. Prayers are welcome.
I'm getting on my knees.
We're down to their attorneys and our attorneys, and we think we're like this close. So I actually
I wasn't going to totally bring that up, but
But you did.
I'm actually hoping
and I
to see
did
that.
ask about the rock, so that was my, so.
I'm actually waiting to see that contract come through any day. But what that does is it, for us, when you look at it from our perspective, our family history centers aren't open enough hours in many instances to accommodate the need. And yet, if a public library or someplace near you is open, and we can unlock those, because the way we do that is we recognize the ISP address on their computers.
Right.
If we can unlock it to them, then we stay within our contractual obligations, and we extend the rights to those libraries. And so that helps us to be able to leverage the collection and gain access for more people. So we're very encouraged by and very enthusiastic with the affiliate library program. And yes, it should be coming to a library near you soon.
With that in mind, of course, I'm thinking in my county, we don't have an affiliate library. We have a local public library.
They can be an affiliate.
I was going to say, what would be the, I mean, without getting into a lot of detail, but is the process difficult? Or
the process is not difficult. It's an application. Cheri Bush manages that for me.
Okay. Let me look into that for our local library.
You can send Cheri an email. You can send me an email.
Okay.
Cheri will be, if you send it to me, Cheri's the one that will answer it, but that's the way it goes.
I've got her email. We'll get you
Okay, good. Thanks, Shelley.
Melissa.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll put that link in our show notes.
And she'll just send you a packet, and the library just fills that packet out. And then honestly, it really depends on whether or not the libraries, a lot of the public libraries obviously are governed by the city attorneys, for example, city or county attorneys. And so it's a contract that the attorneys generally want to review, and then they determine whether or not they're going to sign it. And so in some instances, that's where we seem to run into the delays, are either it working through the priorities within the attorney's office that it finally surfaces to the top of the pile and they get it read and they say, oh yeah, this is fine, and send it on, right? But sometimes it takes 6, 8, 9, 10 weeks for it to get to the top of the pile. So
I have a question.
Okay, this will be the last one because we have kept.
What if the Historical Society has a library?
If you're what?
An official library, a historical society.
Yeah, they can be an affiliate.
Are you kidding me?
No.
All right, Charlottesville. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Cheri, I have to give kudos to Kathleen Caldas for giving me the background.
Yes.
I told her I would get it in the video, get it in the thing.
Thank you for the the picture, because that's cool. That just was perfect for tonight. Perfect for tonight. David, thank you so much for all of your hard work with the library. And I mean, it was always a fun place to go to, but you have made so many wonderful changes that just make it even better to go and research. So we appreciate that. Before we say goodbye, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to say about the library? Let you have the last word.
Well, I hope that while we've made a few changes, we're just getting a good start. And so it's like I'm telling my staff and missionaries and volunteers, grab hold of the saddle horn and hang on for the whole ride here, because anytime you make changes, you just go through a little bit of rough water to get there. And so what I like is that the genealogical crowd seems to be very patient, and they understand what we're trying to do for them, not to them. And that's always helpful. And I think there's just this is a very giving community. And it's almost like I can't help you enough, right? And so everybody's kind of in this together, and we're locked arm in arm, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's why I haven't retired. I love getting up and going to work every morning. I love my job. And so at some point I know I'm going to have to make room for some younger people to take their turn, and we'll do that at the right moment. I don't know when it is yet, but sitting at home these days is looking very good. I will just tell you that. So. But thank you for all you do. Thank you for all of the information that you share in blogs, and all of the information that you share with your societies and with everything you do, because you're all friends of the house, right? And so FamilySearch is only able to do what we can do because of all of you, because you continue to share and to give back to the community. And that's really how we get everything done that we do, is we do it all together. So thank you all.
Well, thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
David.
David.
Yay. We all clapped. We make a lot of noise, but we'll just make nobody would hear anything.
Hawaii.
Well, with that, we will say good night, and thank you so much for watching this episode of Gen Friends, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 And if I